welcome to Elements of Ayurveda, Empowering Wisdom of Life. I'm your host, Colette, and in this podcast, I hope to empower you to take charge of your own health by sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, the ancient healing tradition from India. We will also discuss topics like health and wellness, nutrition, yoga, fitness, meditation, breath work, and much more, as well as interviewing lots of inspiring people along the way. My humble wish is to help you to connect to your true nature, to Mother Nature, and to each other. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe to the show, and the new episodes will automatically download for you to enjoy. If you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend you listen to the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. I've also set up a Facebook group for us to connect and to support each other, and I'd love for you to join me over at Elements of Ayurveda podcast group. And now, here's the show. Hello, and welcome to Elements of Ayurveda. I'm here with Amy. Hello, Amy.
Good morning.
And as most of you know, Amy is now a regular guest on the show, and we come on and discuss various topics. And today we're going to talk about emotional eating, which is a loaded topic, right, Amy?
Very loaded, very emotionally loaded.
Exactly. And like you said, we could do several shows on this topic, actually.
Yes, we said we have 3 hours. Do you want to go for it?
You know we could, but we'll try. We'll try rein it in.
Yes.
So, and I feel that with food and nutrition, nourishment, it's our earliest sign of love and affection. And I feel that's why there's so much emotion around food, because it's, you know, our first nourishment and sense of love and comfort and pacification comes through food, really, from our mothers and fathers. And it's such, you know, we're learning at such a young age. It's been laid down into our matrix of how food can really help us calm us. It can, of course, nourish us. It can make us feel energized. It can help us be more creative. It can give us strength. I mean, there's so much that comes with this simple act of eating. Anything else you want to add in there?
Yeah, I have a joke with myself that food is the solution to all problems, meaning if you're too excited, you can eat something and bring yourself down. If you're depressed, you can eat something and come up. It's a way of emotional regulation, and we know that emotional regulation hopefully should come from the inside out, but it's something that many of us learned, you know, if you're upset, have a cookie, right? That something external to us can help us to regulate our mood, regulate our energy levels, regulate our emotions.
Yes, it's so true that it's so loaded, the topic, the conversation of food and emotions, and there can be numerous factors as to why we overeat and why we depend on a food to calm our emotions. Maybe it's to numb emotional pain. Maybe it's to calm our stress, for sadness, for loneliness, for fear, frustration. I mean, there really can be so many reasons why we emotionally overeat. Is there any other things that come to mind for you?
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind, I recently did a 4-part emotional eating lecture series online, and I targeted it not just to overeating, but also undereating. I know a lot of people who regulate their emotions and their stress by going to extreme control over what they're putting in their mouths. So I think it can go either way, overeating or undereating.
Yeah, I've done both. Definitely in my life. I know there was a stage where I was trying to control my food and I went quite thin. And then there was a stage where everything was out of control in my life. That was in my 20s. And then there's definitely been, even when I was younger, I mean, emotionally overeating definitely throughout my life, which I feel I've got a handle on now, thankfully, through all the work I've done and different cleanses I've done. But can be either over or under eating. And, you know, from an Ayurvedic perspective, emotional factors can increase uncoordinated movement of the prana vata within the mind, which can stimulate the agni or the digestive fire, giving us the feeling of hunger. However, it's not real hunger. So it's really that the vata dosha that gets out of whack when we have these emotional factors causing our nervous system to activate and causing undue stress in our body. So with these feelings, even though it's not real hunger, we desire something to nourish it, but really it's all about wanting some deeper nourishment, whether it's love or support or connection. What's happening is we can't access that deeper level of support that we want, love or connection, whatever it is, and therefore that we're turning to food, or like you said in other cases, turning away from food because we may feel we're not worthy of it, or for whatever other reasons that we want to punish ourselves.
Right. And just to reiterate what you said about Ayurvedic's view, this is mostly what I see is that when someone gets very high vata, too much air and too much space in their mind and body, they want grounding. They want to add some earth. And food is a very accessible way to do that, a very quick way, a very inexpensive way. You eat that pastry, you brought yourself back down temporarily out of vata, and grounded yourself a bit. So it's very interesting to think that by decreasing vata through lifestyle management, you would lose weight, because one would mainly, at least in the Western exercise physiology perspective, they would think, oh, I need to go to the gym, I need to move, I need to exercise, which is increasing vata further, causing you to want to ground with food. It's a really difficult cycle. And there was an article in Time magazine a few years ago that really stood out to me. And it basically said, look, you're not going to lose weight by exercising. It's a given. You need to exercise, but that's not how you lose weight, because research in exercise physiology shows that we become fit fatties. It's a very horrible word to say, but the truth is we need to modify our lifestyle, as Ayurveda says, to bring the vata down, getting enough sleep, having nourishment, comfort, not stressing ourselves out. These bring the vata down, and then you won't need to over-exercise, causing the vata to go higher. So it's a cycle, and I myself have been in this cycle for years. And when I bring my vata down, the weight falls off.
Yeah. So true. And as we always say, most of us are vata provoked now with our society. But I'd also like to talk a little bit, while we're talking about hunger, is, well, what is real hunger? And I know I talk about this a lot with clients on my cleanses, and I ask them to wait and until they feel the real signs of hunger before they eat. Because in my cleanses, we do a whole food, all natural cleanse. But I ask them, give your body time to rest and digest, and wait until the real signs of hunger. And I always, get asked, well, what is that? Because most of us don't really experience that nowadays, because we have so much food around us all the time. And really it's when the previous meal is digested, and that could be anywhere from 2.5 to 3 hours, maybe longer, and of course it depends on the individual. And if you are in sync with the circadian rhythms, if you're eating at certain times of the day, which we know now is extremely important for our clock genes, you should get hungry at that certain time of day. And it's also having this lightness in the stomach as well. Is there anything else that you want to add there, Amy?
Yes, I think that's so critical, that you eat and then you digest.
Yeah.
And then you eat. And we're so used to, and in Western nutrition even, has like diabetics eating 6 and 7 times a day, these small meals. And what was described to me is that if something's digested 2/3 of the way, and you put more food on top of it, your enzymes and your digestive process gets really mixed up, because you have partially digested food, and now you have another meal to try to digest with different enzymes, and that's what causes ama, ama.
Those toxins.
And going back to what you were saying about hunger, I've been doing some work with an Ayurvedic practitioner, and she has me looking at, do I have hunger of the eyes? I see something and I feel hungry? Do I have hunger of scent? Do I smell something? Do I have hunger where I actually feel it in my stomach? Do I have hunger where I, vicariously see someone else eating and think, oh, it's time for me to eat? Like really examining how my senses are drawing me into hunger and what's true hunger and what's kind of a physiological response to, oh, I smell that and I see that and I touch that. So really tuning into my somatic sensations in my body to determine if I'm truly hungry or if my eyes saw a donut and started a whole cascade of physiological changes thinking I might get that donut.
Right. And then there's a lot of different belief systems that come up if you see something, for example, the donut, and you remember from childhood, and then there could be a whole plethora of different emotions that go along with that.
I'd love to share an article that I wrote recently called Emotional Eating, Yoga Therapy, and Neuroscience. It was published on a website called yogamate.org on May 17th.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating to me that yoga philosophy outlined this stuff thousands of years ago, and neuroscience is starting to confirm what these ancient rishis know. So in my research for this article, there was an article that I referenced called Get Behavior Change That Lasts Using Neuroscience. And that was published by Christine Comaford in Forbes magazine on April 7th, 2015. And she outlines in a very simple way what neuroscience has figured out about lasting health behavior change. So I'm just going to go through kind of a series of steps.
Oh, great.
And then show you how neuroscience and yoga see it exactly the same.
Wow.
So what neuroscience is telling us is that we all have a self-image, a visual picture of who we are and how we are in the world, and that certain parts of our brain light up depending on how it is that we experience our self-image. This self-image is very connected in our mind, in our brain, to the kinesthetic sensations that we identify in our body. Some people would call that interoception. So, for instance, if I have a self-image that my belly is too big, there's going to be somatic sensations in that part of my body, my belly, that correspond to my self-image. They're very linked. And taking it one step further, these somatic sensations, believe it or not, are 100% connected to old memories, people, places, situations. In yoga, we call that a vasana, V-A-S-A-N-A, a vasana. And those vasanas, or those sensations that are connected to old memories, drive our current choices, our current habits. In yoga, we call this our current samskaras. So, for instance, I have an image that my belly isn't the right size. The somatic sensations confirm that. These somatic sensations are connected to something from my past. I'll just say kind of a funny story. My dad is a minister, and my childhood was filled with white wedding cake. I would go to every wedding, right? So I've got these old memories around white wedding cake and love and all these happy people getting married, right?
Yeah.
And that drives my current habits. So there have been days where I have had a really rough day, and what do I want? Strangely, white wedding cake.
Oh my goodness, really?
And I didn't put it together until I was an adult. I just knew I had this desire for white wedding cake.
Wow.
Happened to talk to my dad, about this, and he's like, "Well, of course, you went to all those weddings when you were a child." And okay.
Goodness.
That was unconscious to me, right?
Yeah.
So it's unconscious to most of us. Our choice is 95% unconscious. But what happens, according to neuroscience, is when I eat the white wedding cake, that reinforces pings in my brain about my self-image. And the whole cycle continues to repeat itself. So that's what neuroscience says. And it's exactly what the ancient yoga texts say. So that's where they're the same.
Right.
What modern neuroscience is trying to do is intervene in that cycle with new external stimulus, new ways to break into your self-image or break into those somatic body sensations or break into examining those old memories through therapy. It's all external, trying to break that cycle. But the difference with yoga is yoga says we must break the cycle from the inside out. We must reestablish a different self-image, a new link. We must reestablish new somatic sensations in our body from the inside. We must reestablish those old stories, those old memories from the inside out. We must reestablish new habits and new patterns from the inside out. So that's the difference, is that the Western science world is trying to find things from the outside to change.
Very interesting.
And yoga is saying, no, it's an inside job. And yoga takes it one step further and says, this inside job has to be a positive feeling and a positive link and joyful and spacious. And what can we do to get spacious, joyful feelings from the inside out around your eating habits, right? That's important.
Yeah.
I've gone to Weight Watchers, I'll be honest, and the dread of the day before weigh-in, thinking I'm going to eat soup today because tomorrow I'm going to have to go there and weigh in front of everyone, and the lady at the scale is going to give me that look again. What yoga says is that doesn't work. That's an external stimulus that's creating shame. And in fact, that's going to make the cycle even worse. It's going to contribute to my poor self-image. So how is it, and this is what I try to address in this 4-part series of workshops that I put out on emotional eating, how is it that I can do it from inside out? How is it that I can do it in a joyful, spacious way that actually changes my health behavior permanently and in a sustainable way? Instead of trying 18 different diets, none of them work, and now I'm in a deeper hole than when I started with my self-image.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you give us a little bit of a sense about the course that you have, and, obviously without divulging all the information, but about what way that you deal with that? How do you handle it?
Yeah, so I broke it up into 4 parts, and what yoga says is that we work from gross to subtle, that's how practices should be established. And so part 1 is looking at our relationship with food and how is it that we're using that? Are we punishing ourselves by starving ourselves? Are we rewarding ourselves by overeating? What is our relationship with food? And trying to understand that food, the purpose of it is to nourish, and really, keeping some journals and really looking at how we're using food in ways other than nourishment, and what would it be like if our relationship with food truly was nourishing, and how can we establish kind of new patterns, again, joyful, spacious patterns around nourishment. And I don't know about you, but I was at Yogaville, Yoga Ashram in Virginia last weekend, and the food was amazing. And it was joyful to eat, and I ate correct amounts, and I didn't eat in between meals, and it was such a nice experience with food. How can we make that happen in our daily life?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that's part 1. Part 2 is going 1 level inward from gross to subtle, and it's about looking at your relationship with your loved ones. And I don't know about you, but the people that I hang out with really impact my stress levels. They impact my self-image. They impact what I choose to eat, because if they're eating it, I might choose to eat that too. Mm-hmm. Just really examining if the people around us are nourishing us and supporting us and lifting us up and helping us towards our goal of eating healthfully and having a good relationship with food, or are they throwing roadblocks and obstacles? Are they consciously or unconsciously stressing us out so much that we end up eating, just really with your husband, your wife, your children, your best friend, your colleagues at work, just really examining the people in your life and how that impacts your relationship to food. Yeah. So that's 2. Mm-hmm. Part 3, taking it inward another level, we're getting more and more subtle, is looking at our relationship to ourselves. Why are you here on earth? What is your purpose? How can you nourish yourself and maximize the way that you contribute to the world? Looking at the goals that you've set for yourself in this world, and if your body weight, whether it's too much or too little, is stopping you from that goal. Mm-hmm. Is it somehow an obstacle to your path of contributing in the way that you'd like to contribute? And along with that goes, do you feel comfortable in your body? Do you have, a pain-free body? Those types of things. So really looking at, and for me, that's the carrot and the stick, because I personally, on my journey, the stick never worked. Okay. I could be like, you're bad. Why did you eat that? And an hour later, I'd be eating it again. Mm. For me, I always needed the carrot. Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? How do I want to get there? Mm. And is the pain in my body stopping me from doing what I want to do? Right? So that's the carrot. So that's part 3. And then part 4, going to the very deepest part of yourself, the divine within, and really getting honest about, do you have trust? Do you have faith? And in yoga, we call this shraddha. Mm-hmm. Do you trust that you'll be cared for and safe? Do you know that you are loved? Do you embrace this divinity within? Because if we do, if I feel safe, if I know I'm loved deeply, I shouldn't have to go to food as the solution to all things. The energy manager, the mood manager, the emotional manager. Mm-hmm. I should be able to connect deeply within myself and find the tools and techniques through yoga and Ayurveda to connect so deeply that I don't have to go to all these outside things. And this could apply to any addiction, right?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think all addictions have the same root and cause. Yeah.
Right. So, for me, I went through this process of gross to subtle, and I had to finally come to the realization that I didn't have strong faith. I didn't trust that it would all work out, and that I am on the right path even when it's painful. And once I got clarity about that, you won't believe this, but when I truly took care of the 4th level, the 4th workshop, my connection to the divinity within me, the other levels seemed to clear up.
Yep.
My connection to myself, my relationship to others, and how I nourish myself, everything started to shift.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I would believe that. So once you got on your spiritual journey, as it were, is that fair to say?
Yeah, well, I think I was on a spiritual journey for decades before that, but I think I assumed I had faith in an intellectual way, like, oh yes, I trust, I have faith, I'm a yogi, I've read all the texts about how important shraddha is. But when push came to shove and I got in a really difficult situation, I worried and worried and worried and increased the vata and ate and ate and ate. I really wasn't living what I was preaching. Yeah. And what that requires is to get on my mat and get into my meditation and examine, why do I have fear right now? Why do I have so much anger right now? Why don't I trust this is going to work out? Why am I just completely worried about this thing? Why can't I let it go? And I kind of learned detach and to surrender and say, I'm going to give this about a half an hour each day because I need a place to put it.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to compartmentalize, and I'm not going to allow myself to think about that until 24 hours from now.
Okay.
And that's how I learned to manage it, that I had a little receptacle. Okay, you have this worry time if you want to take it.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the day, you're going to go into trust and surrender. And every time the fear comes up, you're going to say, I surrender. And I've learned to do that. It's magic.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I could do it.
Yeah, but that makes so much sense to me when you talk about your vata being out of balance, and that when the fear and anxiety came up, because when vata becomes imbalanced and the mind, the mental qualities, especially rajas, go into that fear, that restlessness, that anxiety. And one of the things that Ayurveda recommends to bring the vata mind from rajas back into sattva is faith in something.
Right.
So this goes exactly in line with what you say, faith in something, believing, trusting, handing your worries over to something bigger than yourself.
100%. And that's why I say that in yoga, the solution to reformatting these destructive patterns, it's an inside job.
Yeah.
There's nothing external that's going to do it for you. I mean, I'm not saying you can't go to Catholic Mass in the morning and get support and sit in a quiet chapel and use that as a way to help strengthen your inner peace. But ultimately, it comes down to you and you.
Yes.
Me and me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how many of us teach this stuff, but we don't truly surrender. We don't really let it go to God or whatever you want to call that, you know?
Yeah. It takes a lot to get to that point, you know, that you to truly understand the meaning of surrendering and letting go, because we're so much control freaks, many of us, you know?
Yeah. I remember 15 years ago in India saying, I finally understand surrender. Looking back, I laugh. I'm like, I scratched the surface. And I think our whole life is one big opportunity to practice surrender. And in yoga, we call it Ishvara Pranidhana, where we give it to something higher than ourselves. And that doesn't mean we have to have an image of God with a white beard. I have a friend who is an atheist, and his definition is that when he needs help, he has family and friends that will be there for him.
Right.
And that's his definition of surrender.
Right. And it can be different for everybody. It can be so many things. It could be nature. It could be anything. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be religious icon or spiritual. It could be anything that you find comfort in. It could be your journal.
It could be your pet.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. It could be your pet.
Yeah. So there's many, many ways to find comfort and just admitting to yourself that I don't have control. I mean, I think that's a big one, is just saying, I don't have control, but I trust it's all going to work out. I mean, I look back at my life and I think, there's been painful periods for sure. It's been far from this perfect life. And I made it through, and I survived, and I'm still here.
Yeah.
Something was there for me somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times when we do look back, we see the reasons why things happen. We see that there's a guiding light the whole way along. And even though that I've been following my intuition for years and completely believe in it, there are, like I talk about my wobblies, there are times where I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to figure all this out? And then I have to come back to myself and go, no, just trust the journey, trust, you're getting confirmations along the way, just keep on the path. But it's constant reminders daily. It's
all day long, every day. I have Post-it notes, I have mantras, I have little wooden signs. I mean, all over my house, I have these reminders. In my bathroom, I have a wooden sign that says, basically have faith, not fear. So it's a full-time job to control this monkey mind of mine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something that we all have to do. And it's like we have to do our flossing daily with our mind. And that flossing comes with, there are mindfulness techniques, like we talk about our dinacharya, our daily self-care practices. Having a schedule, a structure, and we've talked about this in many episodes before about how to set up our lives so that we don't go into those rajasic or tamasic mindsets, and that we try to live a sattvic life. And your course sounds amazing, and for everybody listening, we're going to link to this in the show notes. What's the name of the course, Amy?
I think it's just emotional eating and yoga, something like that. Perfect. And then there's 4 parts. Yeah. Great.
So we'll definitely link to that. And that's fantastic. And I love how it goes from gross to subtle. I love that journey that you take, and that, you're starting off with a relationship with your food, and then with your relationships, your loved ones, and then with yourself, and then getting down into, okay, what do you believe in? And for me, like I said, I've struggled with both overeating and undereating throughout my life. Just gone periods of it. I would have always been, had a rounder, more kapha figure, definitely when I was younger. And for me, what helped me, of course, is the Ayurveda, and starting to do the Panchakarma cleanse, and then doing regular cleansing has really helped me understand waiting to eat until I feel that real hunger that I talked about earlier, and then eating at the same time every day. Ayurveda has taught me what are the best times to eat. And also with that regular cleansing, like we do cleanses twice a year at the change of seasons, it's helped me release any of these undigested emotions that I feel may have been triggers to cause, like what you talked about earlier, to cause this emotional eating. And so if these emotions are undigested, they're trapped in the fat cells. So with an Ayurvedic cleanse, we're pulling out those fat soluble toxins, and along with it comes these undigested emotions, not in a traumatic way, but you might start remembering experiences or sudden realizations about belief systems that you have, and just getting more clarity around that. So that has helped me as well. And also just retraining myself on how much food I actually need, versus how much food I thought I needed when I was overeating. I was eating a lot more than I needed. So I feel that that's helped me. And also there's an acceptance that comes with understanding your dosha or mind body type, and acceptance of, this is my body type, which is why I wish children learned this at a very young age, so that the kapha child, who is a bit more rounder figure, that is not wondering why they're not more of a vata, a skinny figure. So I wish that was taught at a younger age, so that there's more of an acceptance and appreciation for our differences, and for and more of a loving of our body.
I could not agree more that to help children understand that all 3 doshas are so beautiful when they're in balance. And I mean, in India, they say the most beautiful women in the world are the kapha women, who have the big eyes and the, curvaceous bodies and the great immune system and super fertile. And, everyone's looking for a kapha woman. So in the West, we've chosen vata as the epitome of perfection, and skinny is the way to go. And so it's just cultural, just cultural norms. And I would love it if children could learn just how to stay in balance, and that every single one of us is a radiant, gorgeous being when we are in balance.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. We just needs to be more acceptance all around. But I found that, just going through my journey with Ayurveda has been amazing for me. And I've got to the point now where I don't do the overeating or undereating anymore. And I'm satisfied with my meals. And it just, by going deeper and with my spiritual journey as well, and connecting to something higher, that, like you said, it was that same feeling, like it just, these things just fell away. And all of a moment.
I want to talk about your online cleanses because I think a lot of people hear us say all of this and they're like, oh gosh, that sounds so great. I wish I could do that, but I don't have the money and I can't take time off work and I can't travel to the south of France. Tell me a little bit about how you mentor people and take them through a cleanse online.
Okay. Well, all the cleanses, it's all online. And what I do is I start with an in-depth consultation with each person. That's really important to have. We have a 90-minute in-depth chat. There's forms to complete in advance, so we don't waste time on the forms in the conversation. And that's on whether it's Skype or Zoom or FaceTime, whatever is convenient for the person. And we look at every aspect of the person's life. We look at, emotional, their job, their lifestyle, their routine, where are the stressors, what exactly they're eating. And so with that in-depth consultation, then I can take it forward and tailor the cleanse to them. And the cleanse is an all-natural, whole food-based cleanse with the recipes tailored to them. And then there's also yoga videos, pranayam, breath work, meditation, and whatever else I feel the person needs to bring themselves back into balance. So I look at, of course, determine their birth constitution and then see if they have a current imbalance. And then we'll tailor the cleanse to treat that current imbalance. So everything's tailored in the cleanse. All the videos are online. They get access to a private cleanse page on my website. And I'm there to support them throughout the cleanse. Week 1 is a preparation for the cleanse. So we're opening up the digestive channels of the body and eliminating refined sugars and processed foods and caffeine, so that when we get into the main week of the cleanse, the second week, that it's not just this, huge detox and that it's not just overwhelming, that there's a gradual cleansing in week 1. So then in week 2, they have their meals that are tailored to them, and that's for 7 days. And then we do a natural cleanse. So basically during the cleanse week, we're pulling out the fat-soluble toxins from a cellular level, bringing them to the GI tract. And at the end of that week, we do a natural cleansing, elimination or purging. And then week 3 is all about rejuvenation, because as we know, cleansing leaves you very depleted, which is where most cleanses leave you. But with the Ayurveda, we work on building back up the cells and tissues. And then I work with clients as well about a lot of re-education and how to set their routine. We talk about the routine in the cleanse, their lifestyle, and then going forward.
I love how you've designed this. I've done some cleanses with an Ayurvedic practitioner through the internet, and a couple things happened. One of them was that we didn't keep in close contact. So when I had certain events happening in my cleanse, I just thought, oh, this must be normal, and went about my business, and it was actually not normal. So number one, the fact that you're willing to stay, and I think all practitioners are willing to stay in touch, but to say, yes, we will be checking in every 24 or 48 hours. And then the second thing that I heard you say, and I was never aware of this till I started doing these things, that at the end of a cleanse, you are super depleted. And what Ayurveda says is you have basically taken your Agni, or your metabolic fire, all the way down, down, down. And at that point, it's like a fireplace. You bring the fire down, you can take the ashes out and build a new fire again. But what a lot of cleanses do is they take your fire down, they take the ashes out, the toxins, and then you're left with no fire.
Right.
And I love that Ayurveda builds the Agni back up over the next week and adds things in as if to help you have a brand new fire to work with going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's essentially the same thing that happens when we overeat. We put our digestive fire out. So this results in the food sitting in our stomach and causing those ama that you mentioned earlier, are the toxins, and that will cause lethargy, foggy mind, sluggishness, bloating, excessive gas, and many other difficulties in the body. But it's the same thing, that when we overeat, our stomach is so full that it just douses the digestive fire, the Agni, completely. So the food sits there while the body has to work to try heat it, build that fire back up. So while it's sitting there, it's fermenting, it's creating excessive gas, and it's also creating ama.
Right. Right.
So it's so important that, and Ayurveda suggests that we actually only eat food to half our capacity. And I love Ayurveda. It gives you guidelines for everything. It really is the wisdom of life, the science of life. It's like the manual we never received, as it's often said. But Ayurveda recommends that we eat food to half our capacity. And actually, in Ayurveda, we recommend that your serving size should be what you can fit in your two hands cupped together. And then this says that we should drink to quarter of a capacity, and drinking, throughout your meal, like just sipping on hot water or room temperature water, but not gulping water, and allowing the room for the food to move and digest in your stomach. So that's really important.
Well, I want to go back to that because, when I talked about the neuroscience earlier, how we have a self-image and that it is connected neurologically to somatic sensations in the body. It's interesting because for many, many years, if I didn't have a really, really full stomach, I somehow thought, oh, I'm still hungry. I'm not getting enough. I have a 5-hour workday ahead of me. If I don't eat a lot, I won't be able to make it through the 5 hours. It was like preloading. Mm-hmm. And then once I started doing more cleanses and more Ayurveda and controlling my portion sizes and doing, like you said, the two hands cupped, I realized how much better I felt somatically to not have such a full, big bloated stomach, that I had more energy. I had less lethargy. It was very interesting that when I cut my portion sizes almost in half from what I normally was eating, the somatic sensations in my body were so much better. And what's fascinating to me is that when I get stressed out, I go back to the overeating, and I want that feeling of fullness to ground me. Yeah. But when I'm in balance, I hate the feeling of being overfull. Mm-hmm. I really love that light somatic feeling of, yep, that was just right. That nourished me, and I don't feel bloated. I don't feel like my stomach is distended. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So those somatic sensations, they're tricky because you think you need one thing when really you probably need something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I encourage clients during the cleanses when, I say, I want you to eat when you're hungry. The cleanse is not about starving yourself at all, but I want you to wait until you feel the real signs of hunger, which we talked about earlier. But also it can sometimes be confused with thirst because thirst is our weakest sense. So I ask them, have your portion of food, whether it's khichdi or whatever, and then if you're feeling hungry, have, some hot water or an herbal tea, and then wait about 15 to 20 minutes and see if it was in fact thirst or if it was real hunger. And then if it was real hunger and you're still hungry, well, then have a little bit more. But yes, like you said, to make sure, check in with yourself what it is. And, I have to say, I was listening to a TED talk by a psychiatrist called Judson Brewer. He did TED Med back in 2015, and he was looking at the relationship between mindfulness and addiction. Have you ever seen that?
I don't think so.
Okay. It was going around, on Facebook probably. That's where I think I saw it. But he was talking about how, a different way of looking at breaking the habit. He was talking about smoking, but like we said earlier, it goes with anything. It's all, the addiction. And he said to get curious about your addiction. In this case, get curious about why you're overeating and really bring mindfulness awareness to what you're doing and why you're doing it. So rather than going, I'm stopping it, or making yourself feel ashamed, look into it, at what's happening in your body, mind, when you're craving that or when you're wanting that. And to start really looking into what it is that's, first of all, creating this desire. And I would suggest with my clients, I suggest writing down, like taking time to journal and write down what you're feeling at that time that trigger comes in. Because in the habit loop, with modern science, it says there's a trigger, there's an action, and a reward. And I know you were talking about in yoga and in Ayurveda too, we say, it's an inside job, which I believe it is. But, looking at whether it's an external trigger, like somebody, your partner is eating something and you want it, or it's an internal trigger. What is it? And to get curious about it and have a curiosity, not only what the trigger is, but then if you go ahead and do it, go ahead and eat that food in this case, and what are the sensations you get when you eat this food, and then look at how do you feel afterwards. So he's saying that just by making those links between how you're feeling it, why you're doing, and then afterwards, in the case that he looked at, it was about smoking, and the people were like, "Oh my God, it stinks! My hair smells. I'm ruining my skin. It's a disgusting habit. I'm isolating myself from others." That they were then on their own able to make those connections, and it fell away. That need for that fell away. So it's like understanding on a visceral level what's happening. Be curiously aware of what's happening in your body and mind with this habit.
And I think when we're not under stress, we can do that. We can get curious, get mindful, do that self-reflection. What I see in myself and my clients is that when things are going well, that works. Mm-hmm. But when we get stressed out, that totally breaks down. So
right. Yeah, that's true.
Then we have to go and look at how are we setting up our lifestyles, and why is it that we are in chronic stress, and why is it that we're pushing ourselves so hard, and why is it that we always end up at the bakery, Saturday mornings, or, really kind of finding how to restructure our lives so that we're not under constant stress and stuck in the sympathetic nervous system. And with most of my clients, that's where they have trouble. They have trouble giving up so much work. They have trouble because they have 3 very needy children. They have trouble because they've kind of gotten a life lock that they can't really get out of. You and I are women that have a lot of autonomy in our lives because we don't have children. Yep. And we can kind of make a decision and make that change and say, okay, that's out, this is in, done. But there's many people that don't perceive themselves to be able to have those kinds of choices. So I think that's important to point out too, that you may need help restructuring your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting that support that you need. And if, doing, like I talked about, cleansing is great because it really gets you to reset and gets you to stop. But if you're like, I don't have the time or the capacity to do that right now, well, look at it. You're, looking into your daily, like you said, your daily habits, your daily structure, your lifestyle, and get support around that as well. I just talked recently to Dr. Suhas, who has the book that just came out, Change Your Schedule, Change Your Life. So just by making changes, simple, very simple, effective changes that are not time consuming to your lifestyle. So basically it's more of a restructuring of your life, that can help. And I provide support in that. My Daily Habits course, which is an ongoing pre-recorded course that you can do. So there are ways and means. You have to obviously find what works for you and what resonates with you. But it doesn't mean that, I don't want people to think, oh, I don't have time to cleanse. I don't have the capacity to deal with it or to cook. There's other options.
I want to go back to the word that you used, restructuring. I had this very big aha moment recently. I did a 1-week cleanse, and I felt great at the end of the cleanse. And what occurred to me is that usually when I cleanse or let go of something or clear out, boom, I go right back to my old habits and fill it right back up the same way I had it. And the restructuring has to happen to say, no, this time I'm going to let this stuff go. I'm going to do this cleanse. And when I come out of it, I'm going to restructure my life. Yep. I'm going to get that Instapot. I'm going to throw those veggies and dal in the morning. First thing, I'm not going to wait till noon and wonder what food I can eat at the last minute. I'm going to cook at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Boom. You know?
Yeah, so important.
powerful for me to understand that just letting go and, cleansing is not enough, that there has to be a restructuring. And I think that goes for alcohol and smoking and shopping and sex and whatever it else, people are addicted to.
Yeah.
There
has to be
restructure.
Yeah, because those old triggers will still be there. And that's why I have, I do these things separately, but in my overall structure is reset, restore, renew. So you reset with the cleanse, you restore with the rejuvenation on the last week of the cleanse, and then you renew. You're putting in this new daily habits, new structure. It is so important because otherwise, even at the last week of the cleanse, there's that temptation to go back to those comfort foods. But it's knowing like, okay, you can go back and try them, but I want you to see how it makes you feel in your body and mind and be curiously aware about what's happening when you go back to those old foods or those old ways. And then people may go back and then they realize, oh yeah, I feel like crap when I do that. So then there's even more of an incentive to go, okay, I need to really restructure and change what's happening here.
100%. And I think that to me, that's the hard part. I mean, not that the cleanse isn't hard, but to make a commitment to reorganize and get a new schedule and just, like I said, get up in the morning and do the cooking for the day. That's a commitment.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a big commitment.
But it's so lovely when 11:30 comes around and you smell the wonderful food and you can go down there and eat immediately the most healthy, lovely food. I mean, since I've gotten my Instapots and I cook every morning, I can't tell you, it has transformed my life because I always worked so long that I worked until I was overly hungry. And then there's really nothing that healthy that you can have at the last minute.
Right. And then anything, you just want anything. At that stage, you're like, I don't care.
Low
I just
blood
need
sugar.
nourishment. Yeah, exactly. So what I'd love to do now is just give some tips for breaking this overeating habit. And we've talked about several already with talking about that mindfulness, curiosity that the psychiatrist talked about and being really aware and curious about why you're doing it. But also other tips that I would say are, I talked about really checking if you are hungry or if it's the weak sense of thirst. If I would always recommend maybe drinking some room temperature water or herbal teas and waiting 20 minutes and seeing if you're really hungry. Also just checking in and maybe doing some deep breathing and just taking some time out and going, okay, what is this I'm feeling?
Right.
Yeah. And, things like breath work can be great with that and meditation, or even just if you have time to take a walk to just change the environment.
Yeah. And I want to say one other tip that I just recently occurred to me. I'm, like I said, the daughter of a minister. And so every single meal, it was always, come Lord Jesus, be our guest, that little prayer. But I just kind of ran through it so I could eat. And then in my adult life, I kind of stopped praying. And, I didn't say that prayer before every meal. And what I learned recently is that research is being done that when you stop and you pray over your food, it actually changes your nervous system. It changes the neurobiology. It changes how you digest the food. There's actual physiological changes that come from stopping, pausing, breathing, asking that this food nourish us. They can actually track real physiological changes. I mean, you could probably be praying to, just about anything, but there's something that happens through stopping and basically surrendering before you eat. Yeah. That it nourishes you in a different way and your physiology reacts in a different way. Absolutely. I think that's so cool.
It is. It's I know I've talked about this in other podcasts. It's like you're taking in the positively charging the food, rather than if you're eating under stress while driving or working or, watching the news, that those food molecules are going to be negatively charged. And then have a knock-on effect throughout your body. But not only giving thanks, Amy, I would say as well, like Ayurveda has recommendations and guidelines here, is eating in a calm environment, shutting down the TV, setting a place at your table. Even if you're eating by yourself, I set myself as a place at the table. Make it look nice. Making sure that you're taking time to chew as well, and focus on your food.
I could not agree more. My mother was here for Mother's Day a few weeks ago, and we were shopping at thrift stores, as we always do, and she found the most beautiful set of dansk dishes. I don't know if you know what those are, but they are like lifetime beautiful Norwegian dishes, and they're thousands of dollars if you buy a set, and this had a whole set for like $160 or something at the thrift store. And she insisted on buying them for me, even though I felt I had fine dishes from Target. She said, no, you need these dishes. And it really came down to what we're talking about, making it special, making it beautiful, valuing yourself enough to buy the most gorgeous dansk dishes that you can possibly afford and eat on them every single meal, and then put flowers next to your plate as you eat, and put some beautiful music on that's calming. Yeah.
That's key, because so many of us eat at our desk.
I hear you.
I definitely did
Guilty.
it for a long time. Yeah, and I have to remind myself every day. I was like, I don't have time. It's like, no. You don't have time to have, stomach discomfort because you didn't take time out to eat. So, yeah, that's definitely important. And also, when we talk about the areas in our body, like the chakras, focusing on the Manipura chakra, which is located around the navel area, the area of our solar plexus. And it's our source of personal power, self-esteem, and it's got a real power of transformation. And working around this area is really good because this chakra controls metabolism and our digestion. So including that in your mindfulness practices, there's a bija mantra that goes with this area called RAM, R-A-M, and just repeating that in a mantra, maybe in your meditation or maybe before you eat, and visualizing the color yellow, which is the color of the chakra. So there's so many different things that we could do to work on not only having beautiful table settings, but also, like you said, the inside job, Amy, working on this solar plexus power that's responsible for our digestion.
Exactly. And you could do, design an entire asana practice with maybe Navasana, boat pose or something as kind of the crown posture that you're working up towards, and, putting in some Kapalabhati breathing and really drawing your mental attention and focus to that area.
Yeah. And I think visualization can be beautiful as well. And visualizing your goals of where you want to be, and whether that's in your mind's eye or whether it's a vision board or whether it's in your journal, but really visualizing what your goals are. We talked about values in our last conversation, but what your goals are, where you would want to be, and striving towards that rather than living out some pattern from the past.
Absolutely. So important.
Yeah, it is so important. And I believe that sometimes, that just by drawing awareness and being curious about these patterns, and then when you find these patterns or belief systems or whatever they are that's causing you to do this pattern of overeating, I don't believe, at least, there has to be a traumatic experience. Like, you don't need to go through it again and have this whole trauma. Just by recognizing it alone can sometimes cause it to fade away.
I agree. I had a realization recently. I've had people in my life that have intentionally or unintentionally wanted me to feel shame, or that's what I'm perceiving, I should say. Yeah. So I have a big sign that says, just say no to shame. And somehow just that realization that I can just say no, thank you. I don't really want to feel shame right now, or ever. That changed something so deep inside of me. Just that one realization just say no to shame. I was like, wow, I think my whole life just transformed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's powerful beliefs.
Yeah, powerful, and that, I think sometimes, and I've said this before, that I believe in our society we have to think that we have to struggle or things have to be challenging. They don't. Little things like breathing, your breathing techniques, or we talked about the chakra, the Ram Bija mantra, repeating that, or setting your nice table setting, or like Amy does, write out your mantras so that you see them and repeat them to yourself. All these little things are hugely powerful. And also I want to say is have, as we always say, self-compassion. As overeating is essentially our body or mind trying to bring itself back into balance using food, the tastes, to calm and support and rejuvenate the body. So that's essentially why we're doing it. But instead of using food, now we're going to use other tools to do that. So food is not going to be our crutch from now on. But just know that this is not to beat yourself up about it, but you're just trying, and your body and mind are trying to bring themselves back into balance. And this is the way you learned from a very young age. But now it's not working for you anymore. So now we need to get other support structures in place to build a better foundation for you so that you can thrive instead of reliving this same loop over and over.
Absolutely. And that's what I think we're doing through yoga and Ayurveda, really, is self-reflection, making different choices, changing our belief structure, changing the way our body functions physiologically. Like, we're hitting it from all directions.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. Because we want this amazing foundation of all aspects of our life. And to support us so that we can know what balance feels like and then come back to that state of balance when we hit the bumps in the road of life.
100%. That's what we're here to do. We're here to support our students to do. And I'm just so grateful to have these conversations with you. They are so much fun and they're so deep and so rich. I'm just so grateful.
Likewise. And we're going to leave it right there. So I'm going to put the links to everything we talked about in the show today and to Amy's course. You'll find those in the show notes. And if you have some trouble accessing the show notes where you listen to your podcast, just head over to my website, Elements Healing and Wellbeing. Go to the podcast page and you'll find the show notes there as well with all the links. Thank you, Amy. That was amazing as always.
Thank you. And I look forward to talking more in the future.
Okay, my dear. Take good care of yourself. Well, as you can see, Amy and I love our conversations, and we hope that you find them helpful also. We talked about a lot in today's episode on emotional eating, and I'm going to link to Amy's article from the Yoga Mate website. You'll find that link in the show notes, along with Amy's emotional eating and yoga workshop. And I'll also put a link to my Ayurvedic cleanse, which is ongoing. I do them privately. And also my daily habits course, which can be done separately or together with the cleanse. That's the Daily Habits for a Holistic Health course to help you restructure your life. So all those will be in the show notes. And thanks again for listening in. If you know anybody who would find this information helpful, please feel free to share it with them. You can just click on the share button wherever you listen to your podcast and then forward it along to them by text or email. Take good care of yourself and